Good morning, everybody. It is Monday. We are getting ready for the Wyndham Championship this week, the final regular season event on the PGA Tour before we get into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And we cannot do a Wyndham Championship preview without the great John Hasselbauer, the Wyndham legend, who called his shot on Kevin Kisner last year. We will get to that story in just a moment, but in this video, we will break down the opening odds for the Wyndham, some of the players that John has circled. He had Kiz last year. We'll circle the one that he has pinpointed for this year, and I'll share some of the other names that have floated up towards the top of the rankings for me after plugging in the key stats and looking at the course specs here as well. So as always, if you go to thelines.com, you can find John's preview on the homepage. If you're watching closer to when the tournament tees off on Thursday morning and it's not there, you can always find it under the odds tab. Click on golf and you'll find John Hasselbauer's Wyndham preview. So John, as we get started here on Monday morning, we do not have consensus across the three biggest books that we deal with here. Caesars, we deal with them as well, but haven't seen their odds posted quite yet, so we can check back on them later in the week. But at DraftKings, Shane Lowry and Will Zalatoris at 12-1. They are 16-1 at FanDuel with Webb Simpson the favorite. And we also have Shane Lowry as the only all alone at the top at BetMGM at 14-1. Zalatoris, Sung J M at 16. Webb Simpson down as the tied for the fourth choice with Billy Horschel at 20-1. So that's where we sit at the top here. But let's circle back here, sir, because you called Kevin Kisner last year. For those that don't know the story, tell us a little bit about how that went down, because it was absolutely epic in the golf betting world.
Yeah, Wyndham, for me at least, is the fifth major of the year now after everything that went down in 2021. This time, 1 year ago, I was on a family vacation in the Bahamas. And I don't know about you, but I'm bad at relaxing on vacation. Like, I always need to be doing something. So I try my best to just unplug and do nothing and lounge on a lounge chair on the beach. And maybe after like 10 minutes, I was like, I can't like erase my mind of anything. My mind just wandered naturally to golf. So I just started thinking like, Wyndham Championship, short course, like what's going to happen? I'm going to use all this free time I have on the beach to just think about golf. And epiphanies don't really hit me on a day-to-day basis. Maybe it's because I'm not removed from the grind as much as maybe I should be. But Kevin Kisner just popped into my head, and I just, as I was thinking about what do you need to do at the Wyndham Championship, hit fairways, don't worry about distance. You're not at a disadvantage if you're shorter than the field, which opens up all these short hitters who've kept their cards and stayed on tour for so long despite that lack of distance. This is going to be advantageous to them. And then you start looking at the course history, and it's like, whoa, Kevin Kisner has been in the mix a lot here, and he just seems to contend year over year. And then you peel it back a little bit more, and it's Donald Ross. Oh, my goodness. He is always putting well and contending at Detroit Golf Club and the Tour Championship, the other two Donald Ross courses. And then it's Bermuda Greens. What is his best putting surface? Bermuda. Okay, that starts to check out. And then we're looking at the odds when they post, and he's all the way down at 50-1 because he finished last place at the St. Jude the week before. And I'm thinking, is that a problem or not? And you peel that onion back, and he lost about 10 strokes on one hole on Sunday because he kept hitting in the water. And then it's okay, so he didn't actually play that poorly for 3 days, and now we're getting a gift of odds. And then you look at the top of the board, and it's Webb Simpson who's the favorite, and we're not that intimidated by Webb, who hasn't really looked himself that season. Certainly at the same case this year, where I'm looking at the top of the board and I'm not really intimidated by these names. So I bundled all of that together, and I just couldn't really see a path where Kevin Kisner wasn't going to be winning that event. Now, took a lot of higher power, divine intervention, I think is the word that I used last year for this to come to fruition, because Russell Henley had a historical collapse, which he kind of matched at the Sony later this season. So I don't even know if it was the worst collapse of his career, but he had it in his back pocket. He had, 4 or 5 stroke lead on Sunday, and it was playing super easy, and he was really just bleeding strokes somehow anyway. So I had Henley on the card. I thought it was going to be a nice little consolation week, but he gagged it, and then we had a 6-man playoff, and Adam Scott had a 5-footer straight uphill with I think Siwoo Kim had like a 10-footer on the same line right behind him, hit it, didn't move. I was like, all right, we had a good run. We got Kisner to the playoff, not meant to be. And he pushed it like really hard to miss that putt, and then it really just felt like divine intervention at that point. So everything fell the right way. Wyndham Championship is a special week, so I've really tried to just channel any sort of narratives, anything that I did last week. Tried to channel that again this week, so I went on vacation again. I was up in Lake Placid, a nice serene scene up there for me to clear my head. And after all of that, Denny McCarthy is the next man up, and I have a good feeling about it. And I can't necessarily say it's 1-to-1 the same conviction that I have with Kevin Kisner. But I would say if nobody checked all the boxes, I wouldn't force a conviction play for the 2022 Wyndham Championship. And I see it all with Denny. So I am ready to go back to the well and put my foot down and claim Denny McCarthy on this Monday, August 1st, as the 2022 Wyndham champion.
So Denny McCarthy is John's Babe Ruth calling a shot for the Wyndham this week to go back-to-back. You can find the Denny McCarthy Player Spotlight in John's preview if you want to read more about his analysis on why he likes McCarthy. But as we move forward here, obviously he's not going to be a single bullet this week, John, although, theoretically it's the guy we want to win most for the narrative. But we're going to look at key stats to consider. But before we do that, let's look at the course specs here. 7,100 yards, a little more than that. It's a par 70, so only 2 par 5s, a Donald Ross, as you mentioned. And past winners, Kevin Kisner at 15 under in that playoff, Jim Herman 21 under, JT Poston 22 under, who's also won on tour this year, Brandt Snedeker 21 under in 2018, and Henrik Stenson, the former Ryder Cup captain, at 22 under in 2017. What stood out to me on the yardage card is I believe there are 8 par 4s that are within that range of 400 to 450 yards, which should be no surprise that one of your key stats to consider is par 4 scoring from 400 to 450 yards. But in addition to the fundamental stat of strokes gained on approach that we look at every week, you have some other nuggets and statistics that you have circled to emphasize this week as well.
Yes. I think like you said, since there is such a concentration in 400 to 450, that's why we're seeing a repeatable profile of player find success here, because when you're playing a lot of those shorter par 4s on a shorter course in general, it's a little bit more positional. It's premium on driving accuracy, and then a lot of approach shots funneled to that same under 175, really between like 100 to 175 range. So not a lot of long irons here. Really no advantage at all to driving distance, which I think is a good point to harp on this week, because at Detroit Golf Club, we saw a mix of your Kevin Kisners and your Tony Finau's, each having good success at that event leading into it, where you could bomb and gouge it and play out of the rough and give yourself 50-foot wedge shots, 50-yard wedge shots, and still make birdie opportunities or just hit a ton of putts. Here, no advantage to bombing it. The rough is pretty gnarly in Bermuda, especially on this course. It's going to be very important to hold your shots out of the fairway, get some spin on it, and set up birdie opportunities that way. So it's every single year you look back, driving distances at the very bottom, a correlation with success at this event. Nobody's really hitting that many drivers here, so you don't have to worry about a Tony Finau, Taylor Pendrith, 1-2, Cameron Young in that mix as well. That's not going to be the approach to this week. So really all of the guys who are shorter who've had success at Detroit Golf Club are ones who I've really found myself leaning towards this week. But yeah, in general, good irons, accurate driving, good putting. That's the simple formula this week.
Fair enough. And if we continue down your preview, we can find some correlations here. Top 10 correlated stats with strokes gained total. Top 10 correlated stats with strokes gained total at Sedgefield. And past the player spotlight on the soon-to-be legend Denny McCarthy, we can check out the breakdown of kind of the pool of players that you are eyeing to use this week. As always, on Wednesdays, you can find John's full betting card on thelines.com. On Tuesdays, we will have long shots to consider. And, John, I'm sure you saw some triple-digit long shots that were surfacing a little bit in your modeling this week. But for your top 10, Shane Lowry at the top, followed by Russell Henley, Adam Svensson, Corey Connors, Justin Rose, Scott Stallings, Adam Scott, Billy Horschel, Sung Jae Im, and Kevin Streelman. Anybody there that you want to touch on briefly, or somebody not even in that top 10 that you might also have your eye on this week?
Yeah, I am obligated to point out that Tony Finau has been number one in the model each of the last 2 weeks. So I've won $0 off of that nugget, but it's a good omen for Shane Lowry, and one that's made me think twice about potentially having somebody at short odds on the card to make it a three-peat, a 3 in a row. But I do see myself leaning towards the mid-range. I think of that top 10, Adam Svensson is my favorite bet this week. I'm seeing odds at 80-1 on the table at the very bottom here on DraftKings. Just a really good short course player and somebody whose putter has really been heating up. And similar to the Kisner model, last year he had a really tough Sunday that I think is getting us a little bit better of odds than we would have gotten if he remained in contention and had, say, a top 10 at the Rocket Mortgage.
Svensson is the best available price at DraftKings, as you mentioned, 80-1. He's 50 to 66-1 at the other books that currently have odds posted before lunchtime on Monday morning. For me, over the last 36 rounds, it went Henley, Svensson, Mark Hubbard, who we liked last week and just had a poor putting week, so maybe get back on the horse with him again. Will Zalatoris and Shane Lowry right there in the top 5 as well, obviously, in my rankings over the last 36 rounds. And then a couple bombs in here. Vaughn Taylor is one I want to mention initially. I think he's like 400-1 for this tournament. Not saying he's going to win, but I mean, you throw $5 on him to win $2,000, or maybe find some top 20, top 40 markets with some juicy numbers there for Vaughn Taylor. There's another guy you were kind of looking at in that crazy bomb range as well, weren't you? Richie Warrenski, I believe.
Yeah, if you're going to bet 400-1, I mean, this is an event that Jim Herman has won, so you feel a little bit better about taking some big swings at the bottom of the board. Warrenski was in the mix last week. He also had a tough Sunday but finished top 30, and he's never missed the cut at this event with a top 10 to his name. So again, is he going to win? Probably not, but 400-1, not a bad use of your lunch money.
I want to circle back to Denny McCarthy. You pinpointed him. You pinpointed him before the odds came out. What was your reaction when he was 40-1?
Not great. I would have thought 45 to my projection was 45 to 55. I really thought he was going to be dead set in that range. Perhaps we tipped our cards too soon on the article, and the industry caught notice. No, but he
ironically tied with Kevin Kisner, by the way.
That is some sweet symmetry. I think it's not a must bet. It's not a hammer spot, but obviously the intuition is there. So 40-1, that's fine. That's slightly lower than what I expected. 30 is incredibly short. I'm not sure how we got there, to be honest, but I feel perfectly fine placing it at 40. I will wait until there's a couple books here I'm seeing Caesars and PointsBet haven't posted yet. So I am hopelessly optimistic that we'll get something at least a 45. I'll feel great about it, but if not, content to bet the 40.
I'm going to give you a name slightly below them that I think I am going to be betting. I post my betting card in our Discord channel every week for thelines.com. You can find that Discord button in the top right-hand corner of our website and join for free. And under staff bets is where a lot of us like to post our golf outright cards. Other than John, will post an article with his full betting card on Wednesdays, as we mentioned. J.H. Kim, a.k.a. Tom, 45-1. He finally surfaced in the modeling services that I'm using over the past 24 rounds because he's gotten enough rounds now on the PGA Tour. And, you know, some of the other events that he had for further back weren't on the PGA Tour, so it wasn't getting into the data for us. So that's why he doesn't really surface in the last 50 rounds, last 36 rounds. But the last 24 rounds, he has now entered the top 10 for me. And at 45-1, I have to imagine that you would agree that's a pretty fair price at this point for a guy who's been playing well for some time now.
Yeah, he's a guy who I would have bet some money would be shorter odds than Denny McCarthy this week. Just playing really good golf right now, taking advantage of temporary exemption on the PGA Tour, and now he's up to 34th in the world golf rankings, which is incredible for a 20-year-old to have already reached that high. So he's doing it in the Scottish Open. He's contending at the Rocket Mortgage. Seems to suit a whole bunch of different styles of play, but from what those last 24 rounds of data have told us so far, he is extremely accurate, which is very encouraging for this course. That's where his off the tee strokes gain are coming from, and that's the premium that you want here. So a very interesting play this week, and 45 I think is a very fair number.
As we wrap up here, John, I want to give a couple other names. We mentioned most of these guys, they're surfacing for us over the last 36 rounds. There were a handful of players that also surfaced for me, not in the last 36, but did in the last 50. So if you care about more long form, for lack of a better term, Kevin Streelman at 80-1 was in the top 10 for me over the last 50 rounds. Corey Connors at 25-1. We know that he's a great ball striker, just needs to get the putter going on any given week. CT Pan at 80-1, and also Harold Varner III at 42-1. I think I might be more inclined to try and take a shot on old Varner there as a first-round leader, with his closing pedigree that we've seen. But maybe it's time for all these guys that usually can't close to exercise the demons after Tony Finau went back-to-back here. So, John, thank you again for joining us. It was fun. I hope that we get a back-to-back shot call for you here on Denny McCarthy, and best of luck to everybody out there navigating these Wyndham Championship odds. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.